So if you mix it really dark, then it's going to be even darker on your painting after it's dried. Okay, so I think I found my maroon. This is my shade. I can even compare it. If you look and see, you can see it's a little darker and it's a little lighter here, so that's good. All right, I'm going to clean my brush off, get all that paint out of there, wash it off. Always a good idea to have paper towel next to you. You don't want to mix a bunch of water into your paint. Then you're dealing with watercolors and your paint's going to be really washy looking and you're going to see a lot of your brush stroke. Okay, so now I'm going to mix my orange. Now remember we talked about orange and yellow and which one's more powerful? Do you guys remember which one's more powerful?
Red, orange, yellow.
The red is more powerful. So I'm going to start with my yellow and I'm going to slowly mix the red into the yellow to get my orange. Now you might want to assess like how much time do I have, because I'm going to paint all my shadow first. So you might not even need to mix all three of your colors, because that might be a waste of paint. If you only have like 15-20 minutes to work on your painting, don't mix all your colors. Mix one at a time. I'm just showing you how to mix all three because this is a demo. All right, that's a pretty good orange. I like that. I don't want it to be any more red than that. Clean my brush, and then I'm going to make my tint of yellow for my highlight, and then I'm ready to go. For the most part, you want to think about putting 2 coats of paint on your painting. So the first time you paint your painting is going to be called an underpainting. So it's the first layer of paint, and then you're going to go back over it and do a second layer and the details. All right, so obviously my yellow is more intense than my white, so I'm going to start with white. My paint is old from last year, so I have to take the pump off on a lot of them, and pumps don't last too long. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, just a tiny bit, because I like that really, really, really light pale tint of yellow. It reminds me of Easter, that pale, pale, pale yellow. Make sure that you don't have clumps of a darker color in the top part of your brush too, because that can show up in your painting. All of a sudden you get this big streak of red or big streak of yellow in your painting because you didn't mix it well or you had some darker paint in your brush. Okay, so I've got my shade, my medium tone, and my tint. I'm ready to go. I'm going to put my big brush away. I'm going to take my painting. I'm going to put my palette next to me. Get my little brush. Make sure it's nice and straight. I like to kind of sort of tease the bristles into a nice shape. And I'm going to start with my shadow first. I'm going to work from the shadow to the medium tone to the highlight. And I'm going to start, as you do most of the time when you're painting, from the background and work my way forward. So I'm going to actually paint the background first. So the background of my photo is dark. So I'm going to use my shadow color to paint the background. First thing I'm going to do is go through and do an outline. And when you start to run out of your paint, you start to see it kind of fade. Just load your brush up again and continue. And that's how you get that nice sort of straight line, is having a nice loaded brush. Now if you're painting on your desk or you're at home and you don't want to get paint on your desk, it's a good idea to put some paper towel or something underneath your painting. Even a nice piece of printer paper would work, so that you don't have to do a bunch of scrubbing on your on your desk when you're done. So now that I've kind of outlined that, maybe I can go in with my big brush and do a fill in. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to clean that right now, but now I'm going to go in and just kind of fill it in. And you want to think about brush stroke. You could have some thick sort of brush strokes, kind of like Van Gogh, because those will show up. The texture of those brush strokes will show up even with the acrylic paint. Of course, Van Gogh is using oil paints, which are thicker. And then there's another thing that you could add. If you get more advanced in painting and you take Mr. Vedder's painting classes, you'll learn that you can mix things into your paint to make them thicker or thinner. They're called mediums. So if I wanted my acrylic paint to be thicker, I could put something in it to make it thicker. I could also put something in it to make it more transparent or make it more opacified, which means I can't see through it. Alright, so I've got that little corner painted in. I'm going to go up to this top part. And you want to look at your original photo so that you're still kind of looking at that and referencing that, because you're trying to capture the details in that. So details as in variations in value, variations in texture, especially when you start to paint the hair and the eyebrows and the clothes, maybe even the lips have a lot of good texture in them. The eyes, maybe the eyes of your person have a lot of color in them, which means you're painting a bunch of different tones. Or whatever object you're painting has a lot of different color, texture in it. See how quickly that goes too. You want to take your time with it, but it's kind of like paint by numbers. The first pass, the first underpainting is really like we're filling in the sections that we've drawn out. This is a very graphic painting, like a lot of those pop art paintings and prints are. Graphic means nice contrast and sort of cartoonish, stands out from a distance. A lot of graphic designers will use graphic art to create artwork that you see from afar, like on billboards and stuff, because as you're driving you see it from a distance and you need to be able to notice really quickly and read what you're looking at. What are they advertising? What are they trying to sell me? Or what are they trying to convince me of? You have, like 10 seconds to get that message across? It's got to be graphic. A lot of the original pop artists were really looking at advertising and marketing as a resource and a reference for their work. In fact, Andy Warhol was a graphic designer before he started printmaking and becoming sort of a fine artist. That was his job. He was a graphic designer. He made magazine-made imagery and paintings and stuff for magazines. In popular culture, if you think about popular culture, we definitely or consumer culture, right? We look at marketing all the time. Okay, so now that I've got my shadow in the background, and your background might not be dark, just look at your photo or your artwork. You might be painting a tint back there or texture. So good thing I mixed a lot of this because I'm almost out. So now I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see, where did I put an S? Where did I put an S? And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to outline it. And I'm going to do all my S's first. That's why I said mix one color at a time, because you want to use up all your your maroon before you move on to your orange. All your shadow before you move on to your medium tone. I'm going to go slow. You want nice crisp lines, right? This is a graphic image. We don't want a bunch of messy, sort of scrumbly looking lines. I just gave Beck some very intense eyebrows here. This is also not just the eyebrow, but the shadow under the eyebrow. Now you might get to a point where you run out of your shadow color and you have to remix. This is the challenging part. Don't worry about it so much for the underpainting because you're going to paint over it a second time. But when you do your second coat of paint, it's a good idea to mix enough so you don't have that problem of like not mixing the right color again. But I'm really liking this maroon. I think it's going to look good with the orange. Maroon sort of comes in and out of fashion often. Sometimes it's not fashionable at all, and sometimes it's totally in fashion. So I am going to continue to demonstrate here, but I do want to loop back to you guys and make sure that you have your questions answered and then release you to go work. So I wonder if I could pause my video. I don't think I could do that. So I'm just going to stop it.